Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of Brill Media and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Please welcome Partha Unnava, CEO and founder of Lasso Compression. Partha started Lasso Compression with the goal to help improve the way we all move. Partha is a Forbes 30 under 30 recipient who was invited to the White House to recognize his past innovations in healthcare. Partha, thanks for being on the show today. Tell us a little bit about how you began Lasso Compression.
Thanks for having me, Robert. So I started Lasso after an experience that probably all of us have had at some point in our lives. I broke my ankle playing basketball. And when I came back from the injury, I just had this feeling that none of the products that had been designed in the healthcare ecosystem were actually designed to help me from a day-to-day standpoint. So the products I was using were bracing, I was taping my ankles, and these products really aren't designed for day-to-day use because they're designed by engineers who think within a healthcare framework, but these products actually apply to how we live our daily lives. So I wanted to create medical devices and just change the way we innovate in healthcare to create products that are designed in such a way that they're seamless in terms of how we use them in our day-to-day life. They actually look and feel cool. And so with Lasso, I looked at kinesio taping and created a new technology that uses compression in a garment to essentially do the same thing as taping. So long story short, when you put on a Lasso product, it does the same thing as if you had kinesio taped a joint. We're able to achieve that through, some pretty interesting compression technology. But long story short, we're taking something that you would apply every single day that needs an instruction manual, that needs some level of education, taking all of that out of the process and essentially saying, hey, here's a garment that you can wear that looks good, that's stylish, that feels really comfortable, that also delivers benefits that have never really been delivered before in terms of the apparel you're wearing.
So how do you go about like, tell us the process of going from, hey, I have this injury, to now I'm going to build a company that's going to solve these types of problems for people. Like, how do you think about manufacturing? Like, did you have any prior experience in this, or is this completely out of the blue for you?
Totally. So I studied biomedical engineering when I was in college. I studied at Georgia Tech, and it's actually the top program. And so their emphasis is on how to think about biomedical innovation from the lens of the user and really human-centric design. And so with that background, I actually started my first company. I dropped out of college to start it. It was a medical device company. We were making a new type of crutch that didn't hurt your underarms. And I built that company for about 5 or 6 years. Through that, learned the patent process, learned manufacturing, learned, every bit of the nuts and bolts of how to run a medical device business. And when I made the switch into Lasso, the idea was, okay, I understand the framework as to how to build a medical device company, but now let's make it look completely different from every single company that's been in health in the past.
So that's really interesting. So how long did it take you to go from an initial idea to something that was live in the market?
With Lasso, it was much faster because I had the experience. So it only took me about 3 or 4 months to go from drawing to actual, product. In the past, it normally would take like a couple of years, but I've learned how to speed that up.
So interesting. So I look at your website. I'm looking at these socks. I mean, they look like regular socks. What's fundamentally different about them? There's more compression with the socks.
Yeah, totally. So if you're thinking about socks, I think there's a few ways to think about how they actually affect your body. So you have one category, which is like your Nike Elite, your performance socks. And those have wicking, they're comfortable, they're marketed as helping you with your performance in some way. You also have your compression socks, which up until now have typically been used by either people who have medical conditions and need to wear them, or an older population. And compression socks in general apply a level of compression that's greater at the bottom of the foot than at the top to help with circulation, that has positive effects for recovery. And then finally, you have taping, which is kind of its own category, which has musculoskeletal and neuromuscular support that improves how your body actually learns to move. So we took all three of those and combined them into one product. So we have really high-end wicking, really high-end yarns. The sock is extremely comfortable and it feels like a regular sock, but when you pull it up, The difference is that instead of compressing across the entire garment, we only apply the compression in specific places to actually create the same effect that taping your foot or ankle would. So, from the standpoint of what's ever been done in apparel before, this is the first time ever that your clothing is providing functional benefit to your body. And at the same time, we're able to achieve such high levels of quality and comfort that we're ranked number one by, say, Men's Health, who just called us the number one compression sock. The idea is that you can have really great style, really great comfort, but at the same time, you can push performance of a garment to a completely different level than we've seen before.
So when you think about growing this company, you now have production, you have something that's going to help people. Do you think about partnerships first? How do you get the word out about this?
Yeah, there's a few ways to go about it. For me with Lasso, it's really about technology adoption. So I think of it in the same way that, I think an ideal brand is Tesla in how they've done tech adoption. So if you have a technology that's better for the world, I believe it's not just about getting it out there, but it's about how you package it. And the thing that Tesla did that's really clever is they packaged it in such a way that it didn't change the day to day routine of somebody who's going from A to B up until, you know, Tesla really built out the infrastructure that they did. Electric cars were a step out of your way. They changed your routine, they changed how you live. They were able to innovate in the experience enough that people didn't have to change behavior to adopt new technology. And for most people, it's behavioral change that prevents adoption of new technologies. So with Lasso, that's really the core area in which we focus. How can we eliminate every single gap between how people would shop for any other brand that's, apparel or fashion or whatever, and create the same type of buying experience for something that, is truly medically backed, that has the FDA registration behind it, that has the medical backing behind it, the science behind it. But how can we make it feel the same way as buying from your favorite apparel brand?
Hmm. Really interesting. So, I mean, so the package, so you put a lot of thought into how people are going to see this product, and you made sure that it's not going to take you out of your day-to-day routine. So it's probably incredibly specific that they look like regular socks, but they have a much, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Exactly, exactly.
So tell us about the marketing for Lasso. I mean, do you go to universities and say, "Hey, we have this great product. We think your athletes might benefit from this"? Do you go to the public? Do you go to retail stores? Where do you devote your effort in the first, let's say, 12 months of this business?
Sure. So we were focused primarily on e-commerce for the very beginning of the business and really for the first couple of years. The reason being it allowed us to test a lot of different demographics and a lot of angles of messaging very quickly. We were fortunate that professional sports and the medical community picked up our products very quickly. So not only within 2 weeks of making the product, not only was it being used in the NFL, but also facilities like Duke Medical Center treat foot and ankle injuries with our socks. So the idea is that the product, due to its efficacy and because it's so different than anything else that's ever been developed, it's been very easy to get it to proliferate, especially into the communities that truly intimately understand the need. And that helped us build really a base of trust around the brand. We got a bunch of amazing executives from the sports industry on board, people like the former GM of Nike Women's, the former CEO of Reebok and CMO of Adidas, and I could go on and on and on. But once we built that base of trust, built a community in the industry around us that saw the paradigm that we were changing and what we wanted to do, really the next step for us has been now proliferating that into community. So we take a very grassroots approach. We've really focused on a lot of the community-oriented sports, things like pickleball, tennis, ultimate frisbee, sports that have very, very strong word of mouth in terms of the products they use, but at the same time, sports that actually care about what products they're using and how they help aid in their performance. Golf is another example. So we've been able to really build organically in those communities, really starting from the ground up. And from a brand standpoint, we've had the pleasure of, name after name after name posting and talking about our product and wearing it just because the performance it's that much better.
So in that first period of time, that year plus, when you're looking at e-commerce, what types of things are you looking for to understand? Is it like things like colors, or is it like which types of sports players are most interested in the product? Like, what are you looking for during that testing period?
Yeah, so we're looking at different sports. So, for example, do photos of the sock being used on a volleyball court do better than photos on a tennis court? And which audiences resonate? And you find some interesting things. So, for example, we find that a lot of our women's marketing initiatives are successful for men, but not the other way around. I think that may be relatively common in the industry, but a lot of little learnings like that along the way about how we position the product, what messaging resonates, how much to talk about the technology. I think that when you have a company that is technologically minded, it can be easy to get too technical in how you market a product. So for us, a really, really big thing is how can we keep the benefits of this product very simple for the regular person to be able to understand without having to go too in depth, but still have the resources and the answers to the follow-up questions people might have on the website or on the product pages or somewhere in the buying experience, so that if you do want that extra detail about how the science works, what's happening with the compression, what that's doing to your body, that information is there for you. But if you don't, and you're just like, hey, I want a sock that's great and everyone loves this and it's ranked number one and all the reviews are amazing and everyone says they love it and they've, replaced all their Nike socks, then, you have that option as well.
So reviews and rank are a critical part of this process, and there's nothing like time to get you those in at scale, right? Like you can't manufacture great reviews. You can, but it's not really, people see right through that. You need to rank over time in key searches. So tell us about the way your organization is set up. Like what types of processes are you deploying inside your organization to make sure that these key elements are driving the success of your business? Like, do you have a head of marketing? Are you kind of doing it yourself? Like, when you have that first year or the first 24 months of this business, where do you allocate your time to make sure that your business you have a quality product, you have great marketing? There's always tons more work that you should be doing that you just can't get to. So what are your priorities in those first, like, let's say 24 months?
Sure. My philosophy on business building kind of breaks everything into two parts. You have ideating and understanding of the business and the brand, and then you have technical execution of those efforts and understanding. So I believe in always hiring for the technical execution, but you can never hire for the depth of thought that's required by a founder or by an executive team. So, now we have a more sizable team that's able to handle a lot of the initiatives that we have. But in the first 12 months, it was a much smaller group. It was just a few people. And so we had to be really smart about taking the time internally to have the important conversations, which were, how do we message the technology? How do we explain this to people? Test and iterate. And really that iteration process on messaging, it's key in e-commerce, but it also helps you for everything else that you have to do, whether it's retail or whether it's any other type of business activity, fundraising. You can name anything. And so for us, it was really about building great systems of iteration, finding ways to be able to communicate back and forth with our community. And we're a brand that really values our relationship with our community and with our customers. So we go out of our way to make sure we spend time with people that are buying the product, that are wearing it, asking them what they want. I'm very active on Instagram, DMing with a lot of our customers. So that whole part of the process, to your point earlier, Robert, it can't be rushed. My view on brand building is you can't overly accelerate the initial phases. It's like growing a plant. You have to just water it every single day, groom it every single day, and just observe the growth and then see the areas that are flourishing faster than others. And that's a lot of the process that we went through.
One of the things I find really exhilarating, personal, like professionally, but as an individual, not as a business owner, is growing something. Like, I really enjoy, there's something exciting for me about the early stages of growing something. And then for me, there's like this, like, I'm looking off of a cliff and I don't see the bottom, like when you launch something. And then it's like, okay, now we really got to figure out how to make this thing work. What are the points in your journey here with Lasso that you're like, all right, this is great, we're going to do it, and then all of a sudden, like, you press go, as it were, or you press enter, you hit launch, and then you just like hold your breath? Like, what are those moments where you say, holy cow, like, we've done everything we can,
Yeah.
Now let's hope that the market likes what we've done. Does that
Yeah.
exist for you?
Yeah, there's a lot of those moments. I would say whenever we launch a new version of our site, a new version of our product pages, we just for the first time launched our first collaboration with Dog Pound, a gym here in Los Angeles and New York that caters primarily to higher end or celebrity clientele. That was a really important moment for us as a brand because it was the first time we ever put someone else's logo on our product. So that was a very exciting time for us, and we did feel the resonance. But that was one of those moments where you hit the button, you're just like, I have no idea what's coming next, but hopefully it's a good thing, and it was a tremendously good thing. So there's plenty of those. The new colorways, for example, we have new products we're going to launch near the end of the year. So going through there, I always feel like there's a lot of triggers. Like, for example, retail domestically, we haven't really taken a heavy step into domestic retail. We've primarily focused on international retail because we've really wanted to take the time to build our e-commerce and our brand properly in the States. And so that itself is another one of those triggers that you kind of know what will happen, but you don't really know what will happen. And the same thing internationally. But we've been fortunate to have success with each of those new initiatives. And it's interesting because you hear all these stories. Everybody wants to talk about, oh, I had this influencer make this post and it blew us up. I had this person do this and it blew us up. But in reality, you don't things don't really blow up that have longevity. Like, things that have longevity take a lot of iterative time to build and a lot of learning. And we found that each of those things that you push the button and you want to see the results get better every single time we have one of those moments, because we have a better understanding of who we are. We have a better understanding of what resonates, and we're starting to hone in on that more and more. So, I would say, like, yes, there's a lot of those moments, but at the same time, it's easy to overemphasize those in the eyes of a founder. And I think that it's more important to just go through the day-to-day process and keep learning and keep growing.
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental issues that a lot of young people have, and I just turned 40. I consider myself to be still in that young group, but like, when you talk about like kids like 20, 22, 23 who have this and who look at entrepreneurship as in a very romantic, enamored way, and they think about all the possibility of things blowing up virally. But what people don't realize, a lot of people don't realize, is that to blow up virally, you have to be really outrageous. And being outrageous is usually, depending on who you are, for most businesses, it's probably not the right business move for
Yeah.
you, because you're going to alienate a lot of people. And I like that idea of, that's how we built our business: iteration, slow growth. You can't rush it, because if you rush it, you're probably doing the wrong thing, because you have short-term goals and you're not looking at what's the outlook for the next 5, 10, 20 years of my life. Like, it's a
Yeah.
very different calculation.
Yeah.
So how does March, March 2020 into the end of the year into 2021, tell us about how your business acts and reacts. People aren't going to the gym as much or at all. People are arguably not doing as much exercise, although some people are going ham on the exercise, whatever the case is. Like, how does your business handle the last year and a half of our lives here?
Totally. It was challenging for us for sure because we were primarily at marketing at youth sports leading up to COVID. So we were growing extremely rapidly. Most of our sales were targeted youth at the time: youth basketball, youth volleyball, soccer. A lot of the spring sports were starting. Once COVID hit, everything stopped. To your point, gyms weren't attended anymore. Fitness changed entirely. We saw the rise of digital health. We saw a lot change in the capital markets around digital health and the fitness ecosystem as well. So for us as a company, there's two parts to it. There's the brand, but then there's also the positioning and the storytelling within the industry and to the capital side of the industry. So we had to really reconcile within ourselves, what's the bigger picture here? Up until that point, if you had asked me the same questions as earlier in the call, I would have focused a lot more on sports performance or apparel that helps improve how your body works. That is still the central story today, but the way that we present it and pitch it is a much bigger picture. And that came from going through the experience and understanding that it's not just about sports. It's not just about what you wear when you perform, but it's in fact that the products that you wear on a day-to-day basis that fit into your lifestyle do have to contribute to the longevity of your lifestyle. And, so do the daily actions every day. And that prompted us to change our slogan to this phrase of stay moving. And that became really this lifestyle philosophy for the brand, which is that movement fundamentally is a core aspect to life. And so our mission, really, the bigger mission we found, is that we want to help enable movement for people on a day-to-day basis.
So that's really interesting, right? Because as a person who, I've been in and out of the gym, but then like something will happen and I'll just say, okay, I'm going to go really hard. I remember one time I gave myself golfer's elbow,
Uh,
because I had the wrong form. I was lifting weights that are way too heavy for me, but I could do it until I did it enough too frequently and I hurt myself. And then it took me like out of the gym for like 2-3 years because I just couldn't do it.
mhm.
So it's like stay moving is such a valuable way of looking at it, right? Longevity to be successful, and this goes back to business as it does to sport and health. Health in the long term is about staying moving, not extreme behavior in the short term.
Right, exactly. Same as we talked about with the business philosophy. So you don't want the explosions, you want the consistent growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how did you come up with that? Is that something that came up organically because you're having conversations, you're being thoughtful about how you're thinking about your business? Did you work with an agency? Like, it's always interesting how these types of really valuable slogans come about.
Yeah, we do a lot of that internally. We haven't used an agency for like the core brand aspects because, again, at the stage we're at, I just feel that a lot of brand comes from the inside out. Especially for me as the founder, I have to be very cognizant of what I feel and what's driving me to build the business. And so when I'm thinking about things like slogans, obviously I lean on, my team, I lean on my executives, I lean on my CMO, our president. We have a lot of conversations about what the big picture of the company is. But when it comes down to making that decision, it's about picking something that we feel resonates. And it was the same thing with the name Lasso. That came from this idea of this almost cowboy like freedom that I felt when I had come out to LA for the first time before I actually moved out here. And the feeling was so evocative for me. It pushed me to call the company Lasso because I just thought, what's a cowboy's tool that enables them to do what they need to do? It's a lasso. And it's a cool word that holds a lot of weight. And kind of the same thing with stay moving. It's a way of life. And it just, it holds a lot more weight in those two words than really a lot of other slogans can. And so that's what drew me to it.
What advice you have for business people, whether they be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, who want to move from being an employee or being in education, getting an education to they want to start their own business? What are some of the lessons you've learned along the way that might be helpful for those people?
Yeah, I would say fundamentally it's about understanding what your strength is within the context of the business that you want to start. So, if you have been, let's say, working a specific type of job within a corporation and there's things that you had covered that now will have to come on your plate, for example, things like accounting, finance, operations, there's a lot of the parts of a business that are more technical that you might not have any understanding of. And those are the important areas to identify early because you want to find help in those areas. So I would say figure out what you're good at and what you want to spend your day doing, and then round out your team as quickly as possible to balance you where their strengths lie in those different areas. And that part of it's challenging. It's not going to be just within your friend circle. You might have to go, just start talking to people, start going to different events and start figuring out how to tell if somebody's good or bad at these other industries and professions that you might not have as much knowledge about. But for me, it's when you build a well-rounded team that's able to contrast you in terms of their expertise, it adds a lot to the table, but it also enables you to solely focus on the area that you do the best. And to me, that's a winning formula.
So let's look at, we're in the middle of 2021. We're going into 2022. What are the initiatives that you're focusing on to grow Lasso, and what kind of like goals are you looking at?
Yeah. So at this phase of the company, we've built our first product, which is the sock. It was, as I mentioned, recently ranked #1 by Men's Health. It's used by everyone credible possible, essentially. So we've established that we make the best possible sock ever. And so the next step is launching many, many more products that utilize the same technology. So we have compression shorts, knee sleeves, leggings, arm sleeves, all of that queued up right now, different factories. We're getting those rolling. The idea for us is new products help us to expand our brand story, but also colorways and collaborations. So we just did a collaboration and event this past weekend at Rocco's in West Hollywood, which is Lance Bass's sports bar. And super cool vibe. It was a really great time because it was Pride this past weekend. So we did a collaborative sock. We did a workout prior to at Barry's, the one in West Hollywood, and then everyone bounced over to Rocco's, and we were able to create a moment, speak to the community, participate in a relevant event, and at the same time use our product not only as a voice for the community by putting a design on it, but also by putting it on a lot of the wait staff, a lot of the people, everyone in the workout. We were also able to demonstrate that functionality and style can come at the same time. And so that's really the bigger story that we're trying to tell. So our business grows in two ways. One is continuing to tell stories like that through these collaborations and events and moments. But at the same time, it's through different colorways, different collaborations, different products, and using our own voice to expand the narrative of the brand and what people think of when they hear Lasso.
So tell us about your invitation to the White House. How does that come about? And I believe, did you meet with Obama?
Yeah, I did. It was
I see that
a
in the background.
crazy. Yeah, it's back there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was honestly pretty crazy. I just kind of very organically got invited up there. They had a maker fair, and it's super random because I just ran into somebody a couple weeks ago at an event, and he happened to be at the same event at the same day. So it's the first time that had ever happened. But I got invited up and I didn't know what I was signed up for, but I brought, a prototype of our product, which back then I was working on the crutches, and I got pushed, through security back to the Rose Garden and just was totally shocked. I wasn't told I was meeting with President Obama, but he came out, spoke with me for a while. We talked about the product, talked about the business, and it was just, for me, I was probably 20 or 21 at the time. It was such an amazing moment and helped me really feel a lot of conviction in my decision to not only drop out of college, but then go after business and try and make some impact.
Did he give you any interesting words of advice?
In general, it was just, very positive in terms. He's a funny guy, very laid back. So, wasn't too serious, was just more like, oh, this is super cool, proud of what you're doing and pushing me to keep going and continue.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And tell us about your ranking on the Forbes 30 under 30. How does that come about?
Kind of same thing. I'm one of those guys that has been extremely blessed in terms of a lot of these recognitions and awards. I've never applied for any award. That's not my MO. I just focus on my work, focus on my craft, and I try to be great at it. And the byproduct, fortunately, has been a lot of these awards and recognition. So just woke up one morning to find myself on the list, and that was that. But that community it's a fantastic one. So I do encourage you, if you're in business and you're young, like take a look at that community, go to the conference. It's a really, really great group of people to get in touch with.
So in the last few minutes, tell us about how people can find you, Lasso, and what's coming next for the company.
For sure. So if you want to learn more about Lasso, it's at Lasso Gear on Instagram or www.lassogear.com. That's LASSOGEAR. I'm on Instagram at Lasso Partha. You can find me on LinkedIn too. I'll post, relatively the same content I'll post on Instagram, but with different captions if you're into that. Outside of that, with Lasso, keep an eye out. We've got some new colorways coming out over the summer. We've got new products coming out in the fall and the winter. We are just very excited to start to expand what we're doing and really bring more products out into the world that help people not only to live healthy, active lives, but also feel stylish when they're doing that.
Awesome. Partha Unnava, CEO and founder of Lasso. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Rob.